welcome back to another episode of Mademoiselle Diaries. Today's episode is very unique. It actually is hitting closer to home than ever because it is something that is quite personal. And today we're going to be talking about addiction and particularly how I broke free from my smoking addiction because I recently celebrated 2 years of no smoking and I posted it on my stories, and a lot of you ladies asked how I overcame this addiction. And I honestly didn't really prepare much because this is just my story. There's nothing really to prepare. I'm just here to speak very rawly of my experiences with smoking, how I overcame that, the process after that as well. We'll be talking more about that. So, I have been exposed to smoking for quite quite a long time. I am, if you ladies don't know, I'm French and I'm Indonesian. In French, we all know everybody smokes there. In Indonesia, it's probably, I don't know if it's worse, but it's the same thing. And these two combinations, very exposed with these two cultures as well growing up. And this combination is not a good combination if you want to avoid smoking. But yeah, it is really pretty prevalent in Indonesia because cigarette costs are super low. It's like $2 to get a pack. Even though in France as well, I was living there for a few years. Even though it was pricey, people still smoke. People still find a way to smoke, whether they import it from Portugal, whatever. We will find a way to smoke. I was exposed to it since I was pretty young. I have tried it in my teens even. But it was just, trying with friends, nothing too crazy, no crazy addictions from that. Eventually, I decided to quit totally, even when I'm out with friends. I quit for a year or two, completely cold turkey. It wasn't really hard because I didn't have a real smoking addiction. But then I moved out for university, and at the time, I was actually approaching COVID. And COVID is where I really picked up my smoking habit again. Because I mentioned to you ladies, I used to smoke before, but nothing like out of addiction. It was just a pleasurable thing. And I picked it up during COVID because there's so many things going around. I mean, I was in lockdown. I'm pretty sure a lot of us probably picked up some habits during COVID that we've had to deal through even after that time. And for me, it was smoking and even honestly eating. Like I was eating so improperly and I was binge eating. I was doing so many things that were honestly harmful to my body because I was under so much stress. Um, I just needed something, for relief. And that went on for months and months and months. I told myself, okay, once I move to France, because at the time I was living in Singapore, once I move to France, I will actually quit. And I think a lot of us as smokers, we might know that we always give ourselves a goal like, okay, once I move here, I will quit. Once I reach this age, I will quit. Once I blah, 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 I will quit. And that in itself, it's actually, I didn't realize, but it was really holding me back. What did I do once I arrived in France? Of course, I got a cigarette. I mean, the culture there is like, it's terraces everywhere. Everyone is smoking. Of course, I got another cigarette. So I was like, okay, after a month, I'm gonna stop. After 2 months, when it just went on and on and on and on. It went on for years and years. Probably for a good 3 years, I was struggling with this. And at the time, I was on a college and university budget, yet I still found a way to probably buy a pack like every 2 days. I would finish a pack or every 3 days. I would always find a way. I would prefer to actually eat less, be hungry. And yes, I did lose a lot of weight during that time. I would prefer to do that, but still be able to smoke. I remember this one time. I was on a trip with my friend, and she probably remembers this. I was on a trip with my friend in Normandy in France, and I probably had $20 left. $20 left in cash. And that was all I had to my name. Instead of using the 20 euros, saving that for something more important like food, I actually used half of it, probably even more than half of it, to buy a pack of cigarettes because I needed it. It was so bad. My addiction was so, so bad. So that is just kind of to illustrate a little bit where I was at. But of course, throughout all these years, like I have tried to quit so many times, so, so, so many times. I would say probably at least 20 times I've tried to quit. And at some points as well, I was like, I don't even want to try to quit. It's just too hard. And every time I try, I fail. Because I feel like I was really doing it out of my own will. I didn't really have a greater why. I think it's really important to find your why, find why you are quitting. And for me, it is something that is so spiritual. It is something that actually I feel like addiction is not just this physical dependence. I really believe that it has a deeper root than that, that is, you really have to uncover it. And so during this time, so it was 2023, early 2023, I was getting into learning a little bit more about my faith, about religion, and I just felt this longing to connect and reconnect with God. And I was starting to read my Bible and everything. I was starting to be more exposed with it, and I knew that I had to let go of this addiction. Mind you, during this time, I was in a relationship with a man who is a follower of Christ, and I wasn't. In my view, I really viewed this man like, oh, he's super clean. He has never smoked ever before. He probably doesn't drink that much. All of that. Like I really viewed him like, okay, he's like this perfect man. I feel like I can't live up to him. So I'm gonna hide the smoking addiction from him. And at the time, we're doing long distance. When I was in Paris, he was in Australia. So it's easy to hide my smoking addiction. But then I moved to Australia, and it came to a point where I was actually hiding my smoking behind his back. So let's say we're in a car. Whenever he left the car, I would just take a small hit of my vape because I switched to vape in Australia, because smoking in Australia, cigarettes is, don't even try. One pack is $50. So yeah, I switched to vape, and every time he would leave to go somewhere, I would take a puff, or we would be in the middle of a date night. I would go to the bathroom and just take a puff of my vape. And that is how I lived for the first few months of me moving to Australia. So I would say that is like the first month or two, and I quickly realized like I can't continue doing this. My conscience is actually so, so, so bad. Like I really feel bad doing this. And again, like I mentioned, I was also learning more about my faith. So I was doing some things, like perhaps I was like reading my Bible, in one morning. And while doing that, I would also vape. And because vaping, you can vape anywhere. Like it's not like cigarettes, you can vape anywhere. And I was doing these two things at once. My conscience felt really off throughout all this time. I was like, this is so weird, like that I'm reading my Bible and I'm smoking at the same time. I feel like the things that I'm reading is not even just entering my soul. And it was this weird battle between my flesh and my spirit. And I'm going to talk about this a lot, the flesh and the spirit, because I really feel like this is a real battle that humans face. Is this thing that, the flesh wants you to do this. Like the flesh has its own desires, and it's totally against your spirit. It's totally against what you know you should be doing. And the Apostle Paul actually talks about this in Romans, how I do things that I don't want to do. Let me just try to get the verse up in here. It's in Romans 7:14. And this verse is honestly, it encapsulates not only, my addiction, but I'm sure that it will resonate with you ladies, because it's very, very, very real. And I think it's the main struggle that we might face as not only followers of Christ, but literally as humans. There's always this battle, the problem of sin in us. This is the title. So it's Romans 7:14. I'll just read the whole thing. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold as a slave to sin. For I do not understand what I'm doing, because I do not practice what I want to do, but I do what I hate. This is exactly what a lot of people, who are addicted to a substance, they know it. Don't tell them, oh, smoking is bad for you, it's bad for your health. We know the amount of people who have come to me told me, Aurelia, this is really bad for you. You're going broke over cigarettes. You're ruining your health because of this. You can't even, run a proper mile because of cigarettes. I know that. I know that. And still, I couldn't shake it off of me. It was almost like a stronghold. And that's why I think this problem is actually a spiritual problem. It's not just a physical problem. And after that, Paul says, now, if I do what I do not want to do, I agree with the law that it is good. So now I'm no longer the one doing it, but it is the sin living in me, that stronghold that is living in me. For I know that nothing good lives in me, that is in my flesh. For the desire to do what is good is with me, but there's no ability to do it. For I do the good that I want to do, but I practice the evil that I do not want to do. Now, if I do what I do not want, I'm no longer the one who does it, but it is the sin that lives in me. Wow, I just had a realization just reading this. There's this conviction with you that you don't want to continue this, yet you still continue doing this. That is because that there is a sin living in you. There's something that is common to all humanity. There's this vice living in you. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. And it is that sin, that desire of the flesh that so controls you, that controls your urges. There is something to break free from. And that's why it is a spiritual problem. And so he says, so I discover this law: when I want to do what is good, evil is present with me. For in my inner self, I delight in God's law, but I see a different law in the parts of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and taking me prisoner to the law of sin in the parts of my body. What a wretched man I am. This is something that we face a lot, as people who go through addictions. Like, you feel so helpless. Like, what a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death? You totally feel powerless when you're under an addiction. But there's hope. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, with my mind, I myself am serving the law of God, but with my flesh, the law of sin. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus, because the law of spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death. This is something that I know we're talking a lot about faith, and I probably don't talk this much about my faith, but I really believe it is a spiritual problem, and it is only when I started, trying to reconnect with God that I actually got to get rid of this addiction. It's a sanctifying process when you give your life to Christ. It's a sanctifying process because you're so used to doing the things of the world, doing what everyone else is doing. And it's a sanctifying process. But you should know that there is now no condemnation in you if you have decided to believe in Him, that He has set you free from this pattern of sin. Anyway, to resume my story, this one time, this is the one moment that did it for me. We were in my house, and I usually, go to the bathroom to take a puff of my vape. And I don't know why this time I just didn't turn on the light in the bathroom. I just went in the dark like that because I just wanted like two puffs and then I'll be out of the bathroom. And I took the puffs in my vape. Suddenly my head started buzzing a little bit. You know the feeling when you smoke after a long time? Like, I felt that buzz. And I look at my reflection in the mirror in the dark, and I really felt like I was not only in physical darkness. Yes, the lights were off, but I really felt like in darkness. And I saw myself in this really weird and scary lens. Like, I am an addict. I feel like I'm a crackhead right now. Like, to be real with you, that's exactly how I felt. I looked at myself. I'm like, what? How did we come to this? How did we come to this? I was such a, innocent little lady. Everybody sees me a certain way. Yet this is the darkness that I'm hiding behind everyone. And I would, it was interesting because my smoking addiction, I hid it from the people who were living in Australia back then because I didn't want anyone to know. It was not a normal thing to smoke in Australia. So basically, no one there knew that I was smoking except for my best friend. And I hid this inside of me, and I became so shameful of it. Like, I was so ashamed of my addiction. And that is what the enemy wants you to do. It wants you to hide in shame. It wants you to keep this in yourself, and it will grow and grow and grow and corrupt within you, and then you won't be able to even speak up anymore. But you need to let that go. You need to know that it is okay to speak up. It is okay to speak up, and actually it is the most important thing that you can do for yourself. It will set you free. And you think that this addiction has this immense power in you because you keep it in darkness and only you, and you create all these scenarios. If I tell my partner if about this addiction, if I tell my family about this addiction, they will abandon me. They will think that I'm crazy. They will see me in a different light. That is the lies that your mind is feeding you to, and stop listening to it. So important to confess to someone. And after that moment, I went back to the room and I started thinking, like, wow, I really need to confess. I really need to tell him what I've been hiding all along. And it's so dramatic. Yes, I was so dramatic. I don't know why. I just didn't want him to see me in a different light. And that is not what love is supposed to be about. Love is being seen. Love is about being seen. And I talked about it to my brother, to my friends. I was like, okay, I think I'm going to tell him about my smoking addiction. And I remember one night I was just calling him. He was on a trip, and I told him, hey, I really have something big to tell you. And he was so scared. He was like, what is it? Like, did you cheat on me or something? Something dramatic. I was like, no, 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 not at all. Maybe even worse. And because I really fed into this lie that I'm the only one who will ever understand my addiction. And there is another verse that also says that, like, what you're tempted is pretty common to all of humanity. And this is what you should remember. You're not alone in this addiction. So eventually, after a while of covering up and everything, covering up this addiction, I told him, and his reaction was everything. His reaction was pretty like normal. I thought that he was going to, oh my God, how could you hide this from me all this time? He was like, oh, okay, interesting. I didn't know that. So are you planning to quit? And in my head, I was like, what? I have been hiding all along just for him to react this way, like so gently. And I think that is how a man of God will react to things. He will react with such gentleness. And I was I was almost like taken aback, like, how is this possible? Okay, yes, I am planning to quit. And I threw out my vapes, I threw out everything, I put it in the garbage. And ladies, like, it's like something was lifted off my shoulder. It's something lifted off my chest. I didn't have this burden to carry anymore. Like, I didn't have to hide anything. I already told someone that I had this addiction, and you probably already have this person in mind, or maybe you haven't, maybe they know that you're smoking, for example, but they don't know how bad it really is. I think you know how bad it is yourself. You just need to confess it to someone, like, hey, I'm actually really, really, really struggling with this and I need your help. Being vulnerable is so, so, so important. So yeah, confession, ladies, so, so important, life changing. And after that, obviously, I threw all of my vapes, all of my packs and everything. And I would say after that, because it is something that has taken control over me for such a long time, I did not even try to flirt with the idea of smoking. Don't flirt with temptation. Don't. Just, the Bible says, flee from temptation. So don't even try to entertain that thought. Every single time I have the thought, I'm like, oh my goodness, it would be amazing to have a cigarette after this meal right now, like this, my ritual, or to have my cigarette in the morning with my coffee. And I would be like, nope, like immediately, it's like a physical reaction almost, like, nope, I'm not entertaining that thought. I'm not even going to think about how I'm going to get the vape. I'm not even going to think about um, asking my friend to give me a cigarette. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not even going to flirt with that idea, because, ladies, one puff leads to one cigarette, leads to a pack and everything. And I know that cycle. And you probably, if you're going through addiction, you probably already know that cycle too. So don't flirt with the idea. Don't even try to get near to it, at least for a year. I personally it is in my desire, it is in my plan, at least, to stay away from cigarettes and vaping all of my life. I don't want to be close to it, near to it at all. I don't want to take a puff at all because I know how good it feels in my body and I know how much I love it. So I'm not going to do it. And this kind of leads me to this point of the flesh versus the spirit. When the flesh is dominating, it is really, really hard to be filled in the spirit. For my ladies who are also followers of Christ, or who are, who have a relationship with God, you would find that addiction, it actually almost leads you a little bit far. Like, there's this disconnect with God. And that's kind of what I experienced when I was reading my Bible and everything. I didn't convert to Christianity yet, but I experienced this when I was reading my Bible and I felt this disconnect because I was vaping at the same time. I was like, oh, something just feels off. Like, the conscience just feels off. And it's because you cannot be both in the flesh, both in the spirit. Those are two opposing forces. You cannot serve two masters at once. Either you're spirit filled or you're flesh filled. And if you're not spirit filled, then you are flesh filled. And again, I will read you another verse in Galatians 5:16. It says, I say then, walk by the Spirit, and you will certainly not carry out the desire of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is against the Spirit, and the Spirit desires what is against the flesh. These are opposed to each other, so that you don't do what you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, moral impurity, promiscuity, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, cursing, cursing, and anything similar. I am warning you about these things, as I warned you before, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit, on the other hand, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. Once you actually develop a relationship with God, you will naturally develop the fruits of the Spirit, and the things of the flesh, like sexual immorality, let's say porn addiction, moral impurity, promiscuity, casual dating, casual hookups, idolatry. Idolatry is also addiction, When I was addicted to smoking, I was idolizing cigarettes. All of these things, outbursts of anger. Naturally, when you develop a relationship with God, you will want to step away from it naturally because the Spirit of God is within you. So now you'll be led by the Spirit. You will be spirit filled, and the fruits of the Spirit, that is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, will naturally develop in you. And it is, I don't even know how to explain it, but um, it's been a year now that I have come into the faith, and I can definitely notice this within myself, that certain desires that I had in the past that were very, like fleshly desires, kind of died down. And even, I will not lie, there are times when obviously I'm in the flesh, and that is why it is a daily thing. Don't underestimate your flesh. Don't underestimate your flesh. You need to depend so much on God. Depend on His Spirit. Depend on Him daily. Pray that He leads you with His Spirit, not with the flesh. And that is something that I underestimated back then. When I picked up the habit of smoking again, I was like, I'm never going to fall into addiction. No, not me. Everyone else, but not me. I will not fall into it. But that, I actually underestimated my flesh. And don't underestimate it. Every single day, surrender your flesh to God, surrender it to God, and be filled with the Spirit. And how are you going to fill yourself with the Spirit? Well, the people around you are super, super important. If you're constantly hanging out with people who smoke all the time or drinking all the time, it will be really hard for you initially to quit. I'd say maybe down the line it's easier, to have that self control, and self control is the fruit of the Spirit as well. So down the line it'll be easier, but when you're just starting out, when you're just starting to quit smoking, I would say avoid being surrounded with people who always smoke around you, or who drink around you, all of that, because drinking and smoking is kind of linked as well. How else do you walk with the Spirit? For me, I read my word every single morning, and when I don't do it, I notice that I get, a little bit more angsty. I get a little less patient, less long suffering. So, I try to really read my word every single morning, pray every single morning, have a morning ritual to really have that devotion with God. So that is really, really important for me to stay anchored in my faith. And I don't know what you ladies believe in, but I would say just stay anchored in your faith and really your spirituality is so important. Don't try to overcome this flesh problem with your flesh, with your own power, with your own strength, with your flesh. How are you overcoming the flesh with the flesh? It makes no sense. You have to overcome this with the Spirit of God. You need to overcome this not with your own power, because we have these instinctual desires that feel good. It feels good in the flesh. You cannot be doing this in your own power, in your own strength. You need something far greater than yourself. Spirituality is the answer. Having a relationship with God is the answer. It is what truly, truly helped me. And for those who are already in the faith and are still going through addiction, I sympathize with you, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. But I would suggest you to actually have a support system within you. I know people have mentors. That's really, really good to have mentors around you who can speak into you. And don't forget to confess your sin. Confess it all to people around you. Confess to people who you can trust. Confess with the pastors in your church. Confess with family members, with your partner, as scary as it is. Don't let it rule your body. Don't let it stay in darkness. Once you confess, you expose it into light and it has no power over you. So, ladies, that is basically how I quit smoking. I would say that again, it is a spiritual question. And honestly, I have tried to quit smoking in 20 million different ways, um, and it never worked because I was always trying to do it in my own power, in my own strength, like putting barriers, putting physical barriers. But hey, I can't fool myself. Like, I need a deeper desire to quit rather than just physical barrier. I will always find a way to smoke, always find a way. So don't try to overcome this with your flesh, overcome this with spirituality, with a relationship with God, because naturally your convictions will change. And that is honestly the only thing that I have to say. And I'm sorry if it's not the, you know, best answer, or if it's not the answer that maybe some of you were looking for. Tactics, strategies, there are countless strategies. Have a look on them. You probably have heard of everything, all these strategies, and I've heard of them too, and I've tried them, but it will not work sustainably if you don't address the bigger spiritual craving and desire that is in your body that only God can fill. So, ladies, I pray today that you will break free from this stronghold. This stronghold has no power over you. This addiction has no power over you. Let's break that free today. Pray to God about it. Be honest to God about it. If you can't find anyone to speak to, be so honest and raw and real to God. Like, God, I'm really going through this addiction. I can't help it. Like, I really want to smoke every day. I want to smoke all the time, and it's really hard to quit. But God, I really want to surrender this to you. I don't want to be a slave to my flesh. I want to have self control. I want to develop the fruits of the Spirit. And you pray that every single day. And ladies, trust me that eventually something will move and shift within you. One day you will look at a cigarette, you will be disgusted by it. You won't even try to get close. I hope this has been helpful, ladies. I'm always here and open to sharing more tips. So feel free to leave me a message or an email. I'm happy to get back to you, ladies. All right, my beautiful mademoiselle, I'll see you in the next video. Mwah.